Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to be talking about a game that I had just recently procured. It is a game that I bought thinking it came in a relatively small box, had a dexterity element. What the heck? It turns out it's a big box and a mighty, mighty game. The game is SEAL Team Flix. SEAL Team 6 is a game for 2 to 4 players. It's a cooperative adventure from WizKids games, and in it you are going to be acting as squad members of a tactical SEAL team as they go on a variety of missions through a campaign in order to level up and become more powerful SEAL team soldiers while conquering different maps and objectives, facing an onslaught of insurgents of an insidious nature. Is it any good? Well, let's give it a whirl. Alright, let's do a quick components breakdown because you're going to see a lot of this again when we do the playthrough. This is one of the several maps that's included with the game. Notice the thick, sturdy cardboard sides. Maybe you can see it better from the sides. These have to be created one time once you first get the game. These blocks are cover blocks. They don't actually block line of sight, but they do block shots and then get destroyed. So think of it as like particle board in front of you when a shotgun goes off. Actually don't, because that just wouldn't be really cover anyway. Each squad member gets his own placard with information about him, health points, various unlockable things, and then his equipment list, which is custom configured for each mission based on the level of the squad member. Everyone starts off at E6 and grows up. You can configure a lot of this equipment however you want. Then we have the board that says, hey, this is the timer that goes off, and the different colors help for when you want to like put tangos on the board. Tangos are actually enemies, so think of everything as an enemy for the most part. That's what tangos are. Couple here, blah 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 blah. Cards. These cards are the equipment, weapons, and specializations. They matter in between missions because you already use them to outfit, and then during the campaign, as you level up, you'll want better ones. Extra little tokens, nothing of incredible consequence. These doors are either open or shut, and if they are locked, then you have to go through an action to unlock them. Otherwise, they're doors that you can open and utilize anytime. Finally, we have threat marker, or sorry, these basically are noise markers, so 1s and 3s. But when you shoot somebody, or you throw a grenade, or do something, or get caught in a line, there's noise to be had. There's also an alert token, so that whoever got shot last gets tagged as being the most important person for the enemies to go after. And then we have the different weapons of different different ammo for the weapons, and each weapon gives you a little bit different idea of how many and what size of bullets to use for your flickorama experience. Different dice. Each one of these maps is something different. Most of the time, these are the dice that matter. These are a lot for setup. These are for when you get shot at. Do you take a bullet? Do you get stunned? Do you take bleeding damage? That's about it. The only other thing is there's the insert, and I'm taking this off to show you the maps and the boards that you have available. And you'll notice once again these need to be constructed. It took me quite a few hours to do it, but then I tend to be really slow and methodical and thinky. But the instructions were very, very solid. I had no IKEA furniture moments at all. And you can see like the various ones. These actually go on top for the real game, but I put them down here because I wanted to have this here to store stuff. Finally, the last thing are these suckers. These are the sideboards that you'll use when it's time to do some special actions. So you'll actually be flicking or manipulating these placards for things like long-range sniping. And the most important thing, which we'll see soon, is bypassing locks. You're actually going to put bullets on here and then try to flick them off in a certain amount of time. Well, that one's actually, I think you get certain turns, but then there's the bomb defusal, which is awesome. And a time when you're like flick, 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 get these suckers off of there. So that's it. That's all the components. Let's just jump right into the first mission, after which you'll see is after the rule books, which I've shown you. There's a rule book. There it is. Every game has a rule book, right? The first mission is going to be Prism Lens, and we're just going to go through that real quick. That's the first mission you always start off with when you're doing the campaign. So let's get rolling. So the way the turns work, this is, now let's get some intro going on here. This is, as I said, Prism Lens, and in this instruction set, you will find out based on how many squad members you want and what level of difficulty you want to pick. It will give you all the things you need to know on how to configure the board. Very well laid out. Everything's there. You have success, partial success. These are the several things that you put out for objective tokens that you're going to be trying to go after. The board tells you everything you need to know about where stuff needs to go. Real simple. And in this case, we're going to go find some information on what's considered violent activists of the tree-hugging variety. Alright. Gaia's Hope, I guess, is the name of it. Alright, so you'll see that I've set the board up. Now, when I did setup, they have kind of a two-phase token system where these tokens get put out on certain spots on the board, these blue icons there. And each one of these has sort of has a numerical ordering system, 1 through 8. Once these tokens are laid out, then you flip them over, and that tells you in order where the objective tokens go in what place. So for example, I have 8 of these. These go out here. But in this case, I only have 3 mission objectives. So then you go to the mission objective tokens, which are these guys here, and you don't know what they are. They're randomized, and then you place them 1, 2, 3, wherever. The whole idea is basically just to say, okay, let's randomize this every time. Let's just make it random. Alright, so with that, let's get to the actual play phase. Begin, shall we? First off, we're going to go ahead and finish some instructions. I've already placed the objectives and the cover points and done all that. I'm not going to bore you with the details on that, but I am going to do one step, which is to place and spawn the patrols. Now, according to the instructions, we have 5 tangos in the pool. See the 5? We have a hard drive that we need to obtain. That's our primary objective. We have some photos and a medical kit. Photo the door. Okay, so as we're going through this, the one thing we're going to do is we're going to place patrols. Now these go color coded. So for each one of these patrol paths, we take a D10. Ooh, number 2. Alright. And place it on the associated number space on the patrol path. So for green, we're going to go to 1, 2, space 2. Okay. Now for red, space 10 for red. So red begins here, and this is its final place. And finally for yeller, old yeller. Okay, we start here, and we go to 9. 9 is there. Okay, finally, we're going to go ahead and according to the mission instructions, we need to place our SEAL team somewhere in this area. Where are we going to place them? Well, that's an interesting conundrum. And as we know that our primary objective is to get that evidence, that hard drive. Secondary objectives, which will help us level up. If we complete them, then we get a little extra veteran experience to provide to one of the units of our choice. And as success, we go to mission B, failure, mission A, or 2A. Alright, so in that point, I have picked George and Tom. Hi, Tom. Hi, George. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and place them right by the door because I want to get through here. I've decided that, oh crap, they're already visible right from the start. Great. Okay, so the first thing they do, they're going to be detected, so we don't have any chance for subtlety here. We're going to be setting off some alarms. Alright, with that, let us begin. Now we're going to start. Notice this quick reference, which is a very handy part of the guide. The rules are quite, I think they're well elaborated on for the most part. But this here sheet in the back is a nice little way to just kind of go through all the steps. You'll notice there are quite a few steps for each of the actions in the round. So the first thing we do is that every SEAL gets to take 2 actions. Now that's interesting because they can take any action they want, and they can take 2 of them in a row, and then their whole entire input into the world and the game state is done, and then we go through 8 other phases before they get another turn. So that's something to consider, is that these SEALs will set in motion some events that could often crazily change the board. So the first thing I want to do is get into that door. So who am I going to use first? Let's go with George. Hey, George. Alright, George is right next to the door. I've placed him specifically, and he is going to try to unlock the door. The actions he can take, he can bypass, which is getting through a door, defuse bombs, he can command hostages if there are hostages in a scenario, he can do a knife attack if he's right next to a patrol, and those are pretty deadly, although not as ninja strike as you think, because generally speaking you wouldn't be able to do that without being get that close without being detected. He can move up to his move space, and you'll notice that each one of these on their placard has a move rate, and both of them right now are 4 spaces orthogonally, no diagonally. He can also use equipment or use things that he has, like grenades or med kits or etc., and he can fire, which actually might be a better idea. He might be better off firing, because if he takes that patrol out, then I don't know that would be a bad idea. Yeah, let's have him attack. We're going to have him attack first. He needs to try to take that patrol out. I'm not sure. Now, I preface this to say, but A, I'm very bad at explaining games and playing them at the same time, so I might miss some rules, and I'm fully expect that the active designers will more than happily correct me, but I am not certain what the rules specifically are, and like, are you instantly alert? I don't know. I'm going to go with the idea that until the first seal takes an action, then the reaction fire that takes effect after every seal or hostage action, basically the way it is every time a seal does something of any kind of thing, there's always a chance that anything in sight of it, any enemies in sight, will be able to react to it and fire at them. And so that definitely complicates matters. In this case, since they haven't taken an action yet, I'm going to try to attack. So George's first action, it's going to be use his weapon. Now he could use a Colt, and the Colt will give 1 shot, so 1 single shot, but it only produces 1 noise, or maybe 2 shots. Do we use the MP5? No, let's do the Colt. 1 noise. So we know that we're going to need 1 noise. No matter what he's firing, it's 1 noise. Now, George sets this as close as he can, and then he's going to try to flick. And this is really bad. I'm not doing this right. And unfortunately, the table is not conducive. I actually played this on the kitchen table where I can move around like a pool table. So bear with me. I'm going to try to do this special thing. Ready? And miss. Alright, well, sucks to be me. Alright, so is he going to shoot again? Yes, he is. He's going to spend his entire action trying to shoot again. More noise. And yes! Hits him. Goodbye. Alright, so he takes him out. Back to the tango pool he goes. And he's used up all his actions. Of course, he's created noise. I'm going to put him back in his spot. And now it's Tom. What is Tom going to do? You know what? Tom is going to try something a little more unusual. He's going to go ahead and move. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. He likes these spots. Why? Because these arrows mean that he actually has line of sight from this arrow out. That's one of the clever parts of corners, is that you can actually land on this spot and you have all this line of sight here, but also you can act as if your eyes are here. And so he can actually see and fire all over these. So that's actually pretty, and you know, while still being a little bit out of sight and obscured. So that's a really nice thing to take in mind. So those are the 2 actions for the seals. And that's it. That didn't go as well as I'd hoped. I was kind of hoping to unlock that door, but I didn't get to it. So, next, alert sentries take cover. We don't have any sentries. Sentries are basically tangos, enemies that stay in a room and have a one-time chance when they go alert to go find an advantageous spot by some rules to where to place themselves, so that whenever the seals go in, they're there waiting to ambush them. We don't have those in the map, but those are something to consider in the later, more complicated and difficult scenarios. Step 3 is to move the masterminds and patrols. Now, there's a state that masterminds and patrols are in. Basically, it comes down to, it's pretty simple. It took a while to get my head around it because it seemed more complicated than it was. If there's any noise anywhere on this board, and there is, they're alert. So their patrol patterns are going to change. If they weren't alert, they would simply follow their paths in a normal way, like they were just doing their patrols. But because there is something going on, some detection level here that they can see, like, okay, now they need to change. So instead, each of these is going to go find its way to the next most available spot. So they're going to go to the next room closest to the noise, to the highest spot. It doesn't really matter what color. Then this patrol is going to go, I'm going to go here. This is the highest spot. And that's it. That's the movement of the two patrols. And so they don't have line of sight to anything yet, which is fine. That's going to get taken care of later in the step. 4 is we spawn new patrols and reduce sound. So in step 4, there are tango patrols in the pool. Then we add up the total sound, which is 2. And we have the total and round up. So 2 is 1. And then we roll a d10. 8. Okay? So if the roll matches any spawn point, 1, 2, or 3, we place a new patrol. In this case, we don't place a new patrol because it's an 8, not a 1, a 2, or a 3. We dodged a bullet. We don't have any more patrols. Okay, now we're going to remove a sound token and remove an alert token if there isn't one. But there isn't an alert token yet because we haven't had anybody firing at us. Alright, finally, tangos in LOS will take cover. So if there were any tangos right now that had line of sight, which there aren't, they would immediately take cover so that they were better prepared to tackle the SEAL's presence. There aren't in this case, so we're going to move on to check victory conditions. Do we have the primary objective? No, we don't. Skip that one. So then we advance the timer. We use the easy one, so 16 goes to 15. Alright. And then we begin a new round. Continue on. Now notice that in the last round I could have easily used my MP5, which would have given me 2 burst shots or a medium shot, because I have the suppressor that I forgot about that attaches to it that reduces its sound by 1, which would have been a much more advantageous use of my equipment and weaponry than to use the Colt twice. But that's how we learn. Alright, round 2. Now this way, now we're going to go with George here. George? Hi, George. Alright, we're going to do a electronic lock. Yeah, this is good. Now I'm going to do, I know some people might think it's cheating, but I don't really like searching around under my shag carpet for stuff, so here we go. So you'll notice that this door has a level of 4, which means I'm going to place 4 of these guys. 4 of these guys are going to go somewhere on this lock. Alright, so how do we do that? Well, we roll a 10-sided die. That goes to 7. That goes to 8. Nice. That goes to 8, which stacks on top of it. And this goes to 2. Now what do we have to do? We get, at rookie level, we get 3 of these, and we're going to get a chance. So what we have to do with 3 Flix, we need to be able to get all of the blue out of the red. If we do that, we have unlocked the door. Are you ready, boys? 1, 2. Oh my gosh. Oh, I stink at this. Alright, well, that didn't work. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do this again. So he's going to have to waste another action putting together, trying to undo this lock because he's a dork. Okay. And 8. Alright. Can we pull this off? Alright, let's see if we can actually do an electronic lock bypass. Ready? And... okay, I think we can do this. Oh my gosh. Alright. Never mind. This is not a good day for dexterity. Alright, so that's George. Now it's Tom's turn. Now Tom has a different idea. Tom is going to go ahead and he's going to fire his MP5 which gives him either one single burst or one double burst. We've had such great luck. We're going to use the single medium burst. It's going to cost 2 minus 1 for one noise, and the noise goes wherever he's firing from here, but he gets to shoot from here. Alright, I did it. Yay! So he goes back to the patrol. That's 1. And then for his second move, he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, is he? Or is he going to try something else? Because with the patrols moving, it's going to be interesting for him to try to get to that objective. I don't know. There's some thinking to do here, and I think that we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go back up here. We're going to try this out, and we're going to leave it up there. So that's the second move. So that's where we're done. I'm going to go ahead and handle everything pretty quickly. There's no sentries. Move the patrols. Everyone's on alert. There's 1. He goes from 3 to the next, and he goes to the highest one, so that's 10. No line of sight still, but we do have there's 2. 2 plus 1, or 2 is 1. We're going to roll a die, and it is 10, which means no patrols. We are having a better time than I did the last time I did this. Alright, so then Tango's attack. Nobody in LOS. Tango's attack. Can't attack. Nobody to attack. Recover. So then reduce sound. So we've reduced sound. We reduce 1 sound in each area, so now we've gone radio silent again, so that's going to change things particularly. That's okay, that's fine. Okay, and now we are done. The victory, we obviously haven't done that. We go down to around 14, and there we go. Okay, that's the end of the round. Let's just keep going on, because I don't want to spend in too much time other than to explain. I'd like to at least get into some firefighting here. Alright, so this time we're going to try it again. Let's 9, 5, 9, and 3. Okay. Well, what do you know, Wilbur? Alright, let's try this again. Let's see if we can actually pull this off. You ready? I do not have anything. Oh my gosh. How can I do this? Forget it. Pretend I did it. Okay. Hey, pretended. At that point, we then flip this over, and it becomes unlocked. So our next step, assuming that George and Tom, is that George got through, is he can basically like open the door. That's a free action. It doesn't cost. And then his second move is to go 1, 2, 3. Okay, he's done. Now notice that at the end of each of these actions, even something is like unlock a door, use something, whatever, there's always a check for line of sight stuff. So if you've got something looking at you, I mean, you could take reaction fire about over a ton of stuff. Alright, so we flip it over and it's evidence. Evidence. Photos, yes, photos. Alright. So, that's the secondary objective, not the primary objective. So, now, it's up to Tom to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And he can take a free action and open the door, I believe. Which gives him an opportunity to be able to kind of slip over as fast as he can. Yeah, okay. So, that's it. Now it's everything. We're gonna, the patrols, because it's just, there's no sound, the patrols just go to the next step. Goes to 10, wraps around to 1. There you go. It's nothing real fancy. This is really not getting that stream of patrols in, but hey, anything could happen if I fudge up. Alright, so that's it. I don't think there's anything else. Spawn new patrols. Nope, nothing shooting. Alright. Yeah, let's keep going. Alright, so first section is 1, 2. He's going to stop and he's going to grab this evidence. because that completes the secondary objective. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, now it's Tom's turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And then he's going to open the door. So he's ready, but he doesn't have line of sight to the other objective yet. And with that, we have the patrol. We continue on. This is kind of a light thing right now. So it goes to 2. So it will be interesting. Alright, so I am going to wrap around. What do we do now? We're gonna... Oh, sorry. We need to drop the countdown down a bit. This is really not really the most exciting yet. We should maybe concoct a situation where it makes sense. Yeah, anyway, let's keep going. Alright, so there's that. You know what, I'm going to concoct a scenario that will make some sense. So, pretend this guy goes to here, because we're going to just at least have some, we need to have some battle here. Alright, so now, these don't block line of sight, and so at the next, so let's just conjecture here. Say that we're all moving around, because I don't want this to be too boring. We have the start of the next turn, and now it's Tom. Line of sight. Tom goes 1, 2, 3, and stops there. Now, he's ended his action, which means that any patrol now has line of sight. These don't block line of sight. Oh, look, the patrol is there. Oh, gosh, how did it get there? So he's ended his first action by moving. And, of course, that reveals this, which is the hard drive. That's the primary objective, so we found the right room. But now, the patrol gets reaction fire, which means it rolls a dice, and it misses. That's good for Tom. Now, Tom can go, I'm going to shoot. So it's going to take this, and cover lets you pick one side or another, and knock it out. Woohoo! Yeah. And that ends that for that. But of course, it does also create some noise, which means that will bring in other people. All right, and that's his second action. Yeah. Okay. So then George could go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that will let him, as a free action, he can pick up evidence. And there. Of course, now we have the evidence. So, all right. So now, in this case, there aren't sentries, and there's no masterminds, no patrols. But if you do not have anything on the map at all, then you place 2 on the lowest unoccupied space of the colored patrol path that matches. So green. So we would place 1, 2. So basically, we're saying, okay, everyone's off the map, so let's bring in some more reinforcements. Also, if you have a very high sound issue, like a sound and alert tokens, again, it can grow if you're not careful. Oh, yeah, because, he was shot at, so now he's an alert. So not only do we have these coming in because it was empty, but now we go 4 plus 1 is 5, round it up to 6, divide it in half, and that's 3, and you go 6, 5, 1. Which means that at 1, you set him on the lowest available path. So that helps kind of boost up so that you're not having too much dead time. But there you go. So we've got 3 units now, and they're alert, so they would be heading that way once you spawn them. And then we check for line of sight. There's no line of sight. But if there were, that they would be taking cover, and they would take cover in logical ways. The idea is you keep the seals in line of sight, but you move to either a corner or a cover area if possible, and if not, you move somewhere in an adjacent area and try and do the same thing. You make smart choices. It makes it logical. And then attack, recover, check victory conditions. And this time we have met the victory condition. We have the hard drive. Not only do that, but we also have the secondary objective. So we have completed this, and if this was a campaign, we would go, yes, not only do I get experience for all of my guys, but because I completed the secondary objectives, I also get an extra one to give to one of my guys, and that means they level up which means that now they are E7, which gives them better equipment for the next mission. This was a little bit easy, but it doesn't always end up that way. Sometimes it's pretty darn stinking hard. It just varies. And also, this is the very, very intro scenario. There's things, when you add masterminds, which mean that anything in the room that's a sentry, that's a patrol or a tango, is going to get to roll double to try to attack you. And also, once you've set off enough alarms and you have units pouring in, it gets harder and harder to try to escape. This is definitely not a stealth game. This is not Splinter Cell by any degree. Anyway, that's a little taste. It doesn't give you the full gauntlet, but then again, the game is worth going to. I mean, this is the baseline, and even then, I am having a good time with it. So imagine adding in even more of the maps and scenarios, and maybe next time you guys can do a lot better unlocking doors than I seem to be able to, especially when holding a camera. Anyway, that's it. Let's get to my thoughts of finality on the game. Alright, SEAL Team Flix. What did I think of it? Let's go over the cons first, because I tend to do that. I start glass half empty and then work my way up. Let's see, I mean, putting it together was really straightforward. Like I said, it wasn't any like IKEA, I can't understand the instructions moments. There were some pieces that were a little loose because there were literally lots of pieces, so the odds of that happening are pretty high as far as like piecing together the wall outlets and stuff, but nothing a bit of glue couldn't solve. The campaign itself is serviceable. I mean, I appreciate that it's not you know, your typical scenario that's been drug out. This one's like eco-terrorism and, you know, taking on people who want to kill themselves and the rest of humanity in the sake of nature. Obviously a different kind of theme and an interesting one, but why not? I thought the campaign, it was serviceable, it was basic, it was reasonable and logical and flowed the way I would expect it to. I thought they did a decent job of it, but it wasn't necessarily something I could go, wow, and the campaign just blew me away. But no, once again, map sizes, it's a little, you know, it's a little tight in there, so group play can feel a little bit shoulder to shoulder. And finally, I guess the other thing that really, like, nitpickies aside, the one thing was that you go into this game realizing is that of the, like, 8 or 9 steps in every single round, the movement of the SEAL team is one of them. And then there's just a whole bunch of you know, upkeep or game state modifications based on and in reaction to your moves. So it's reminiscent of playing like a solo coin game where you've got 3 different factions with their flowcharts and they all work differently, and then you kind of almost are relieved to get back to your turn where you can finally do what you really cared about the most. Admittedly, for experiences, this level of effort of taking care of those extra steps, and a lot of them are optional in gameplay state too. A lot of times you're going to skip, you know, 3 or 4 of those steps very quickly. But even then, even with all those steps, the level of effort pays off in dividends in having challenging, rational AI experiences. But there is overhead for the player to just think about, like, you know, it's not move, 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 move. It's like your guys move. Very tactical, and then a bunch of stuff happens to change the board state based on it. A lot of things could happen, a few things could happen. That's it for the cons, so let's get to the good stuff. Alright, so what do I like about SEAL Team Flix? Whenever I talk about, let's talk about components. Whenever someone talks about components, it's usually, is it sturdy and is it pretty? Those are the 2 things that kind of matter the most to me, at least, for components. It's definitely pretty in that the different maps, the quasi 3D detailed maps, all look good. They fit the theme of where you're at. Are you in an airport? Are you in this room? Are you in this base? Etc. Fit really well. Chock full of little gameplay details, even if they're not necessarily like active part of the gameplay. It still feels like you're going into a certain study or a certain room or a certain area or across the airport terminal, etc. It's sturdy in that the thick pieces of the components and the box insert are meant to last and endure. You know, beyond just sturdy and pretty, it's actually an engineering marvel to me that they're able to take the precision and forethought to create it so that the maps, even though they take initially, like, it took me a full weekend off and on of actually putting them together, but once you're done, you're ready. I mean, the time to get from I want to play this game to I'm now playing this game is much smaller than other games similar to it, like Earth Reborn, which was kind of its granddaddy a few years ago, but that took like longer to set up than it did to ever get in. That became kind of a bottleneck to getting people to play the game. You know, you don't have to construct the map on the fly nearly as much because you just pull the map out, configure it up, roll. The instructions for setting it up are very clear, despite the fact that there's literally hundreds of pieces of different shapes and sizes. It's really clear and really organized, so kudos for that. The other thing I love about this game is that it's not just a flicking game in the usual sense. Most flickers incorporate kind of flicking as sort of the base mechanic that underlines and plums every aspect of it. And that can be a boon or a bust. Moving, like, for example, when it's like, if I'm moving and I have to flick to move, that's one area that can create chaotic positioning. And then to compound that, you move, and then your shooting is also flicking, and then suddenly it can snowball and create even more chaotic results that kind of result in the point where it frustrates more than it fuels. I mean, you saw my example where the flicking thing just wasn't working for me that day. And that amount of overwhelming flicking can easily make an interesting premise turn into a triple bogey on every hole kind of endeavor. Instead, SEAL Team Flix keeps the flicking localized to the place where it has the most impact. It provides the most tension. It retains enough constancy in other aspects of the game that even for those like me who aren't intrinsically dexterous, it's not a wild and uncontrollable Keystone Cops kind of off-the-rails quickly endeavor. In some ways I'd say this is more of a game with a flicking component in it than it is an actual true flicking game. And I think that helps out a lot, because then you don't lose that control of what should be a very organized, well-oiled machine of you know, a team of SEALs. So the other thing is tension. You feel tension in the right space in this game. Instead of things like, oh crap, if I don't flick far enough, I'm going to be a sitting duck, darn it, it went off the table again, penalty, or I hit it but I didn't knock it over. Instead you're going to get things like, if I miss this shot, he's going to be returning fire, so I got to make this shot. Will I face crossfire if I shoot and they return fire? If I shoot now, am I going to make enough noise that they're going to, like, all make a beeline for me and put me in a bad position? Can I disarm this bomb in time? These are way more interesting like tension points to consider than some of the other flicking games that I played in the past, or games with a flicking element. The map size, despite the fact that I said it was a little constrictive at times as far as like a bunch of people playing around it, I think it actually helps because it reduces the volatility of flicking to a degree. Now, other flicking games where you set them up, you know, you've got table size, how far wide you want to place things, table viscosity, warps and bends and ridges and all that stuff. Here, everything's equalized. You have the same size maps in a tight and limited space with clear boundaries and clear borders. I think it brings a little more fairness and equalizes skill level somewhat, if anybody out there has some, because clearly I don't. Enemies act the part. And this is also a good thing. By that, they aren't at the mercy of flicking either. Matter of fact, they don't do any flicking of any kind. So it's not like they're flicking, you're flicking, and they go random places. And just, the rules took some thinking and double checking for me to get to the point where I understood how the enemy AI operates. But in the end, they're actually pretty simple rules and pretty basic and pretty conventional, to be honest. I mean, patrols act in a patrol fashion, reinforcements arrive in a steady but not entirely predictable cadence. Player actions dictate the board state, so you are the primary thing by, do you sneak, do you attack, whatever. In some ways, it reminds me of like a well-balanced computer strategic tactical sim, where the more noise you make and the more disruption, the greater and the more wary the enemies that surround you, and the harder it is to accomplish your objectives, but at the same time you can't entirely avoid being detected. I think the simplified rapid deployment rules for the AI also help. Instead of going, I move mine 4 spaces, I move my seal here, the enemy moves his 4 spaces. No, these maps are chunked. So you don't just worry about, like, I go 4 spaces, okay, I've got 3 turns before he can move from. No, the patrols go area to area, so you're like from here to here, and you're thinking in logical, large chunks of how the enemy's going to get to you fast. Once they get there, then they take cover, they do smart things. really streamlines. Even though it seems like there's 8 or 9 steps, it really does get into a nice flow when you're doing it. Like, okay, we move them over here, patrols, sentry, you know, stuff like that. You know, lots of steps, but in general, it's the enemy movement and the enemy decision points are very straightforward. And finally, thankfully, a non-dice chucking skill operation. Those 4 boards that let you do the flicking, despite my poor and abysmal efforts, are actually a huge boon to me. Disarming a bomb now takes a skill. Shooting a long-range sniper rifle takes a skill. Opening doors, again, takes a skill. I mean, in games like Imperial Assault or Earth Reborn, Firefly, etc., it seems like these games all have this great tactical maneuvering thing, and then it follows by this kind of like reasonable but demotivating skill roll. Like, I didn't really have a skill. I had a number, and that number gives me odds, and those odds give me, like, okay, like I've got a high skill, it just means I've got a high probability to. Skill really isn't part of it. And I always felt that there was such a void there, where someone could take that opportunity to really give some skill, you know, something skill-based that makes me go, no, this wasn't just luck. I actually had some input. I stunk at this, therefore my skill was low. Something I can improve on, you know? It's like, hey, I'm going to shoot a free throw. Roll 6 dice. Okay, more hoops than not. You know, that's... In real life, I like, you know, skill should map to skill, right? As Space Cadets, for example, is an old game that had that, where everybody had a station on a ship, and you had to, like, do some sort of dexterous thing that gave you some skill towards it. And I think that works, because it gives you, in this game, I think it gives you an opportunity to show your skill in a way that's not clumsy or contrived. And finally, the equipment, the upgrades, the bonuses. Not since D-Day Dice have I just absolutely relished the equipment and the weapons and the bonuses. It's like outfitting your XCOM team. It really is, and it makes sense. And there's weapon ratings, specialization ratings. You go through the campaign, you level up, you get better weapons. The weapons map perfectly. A shotgun feels shotgunny to me. The different modes of the weapons, and I just think they did a great job on really making that map. And I think that's where the flicking game shines most, is that it lets you do that. Special gadgets. Those are great. I mean, those are just giddyingly awesome. You have your snake camera, you've got your darts, you've got your high explosive grenades, remote bombs, breaching charges, seekers. Those are weird. But the thing is, all that gives you a little bit of gadget envy, like, oh, I got this. And the tech advantage makes you feel like a really powerful team that's going in and kicking some behind. So really great job on that. And now let's get to my final thoughts. So as you know by now, I really like flicking games. I think I've mentioned this a few times. I actually am a sucker for flicker games. Flicking games. Sending Empire's one of the first, still one of the classiest. Wish they would have kept going with that. Disc Duelers, Flip Ships, Flick 'em Up, Pitch Car, Rampage, Catacombs. I mean, I love them, and sometimes I find that I love the idea of them more than I actually end up loving the manifestations of them. That's not to say they're not great games, or that they're good games, or that they're entertaining games, but I always feel like they could be better, that there's some better way to handle dexterity limitations and such to make it more of an enriched experience. And I think SEAL Team Flix delivers in being it's not, especially because it's not a wholly owned subsidiary of flicking in its entirety. It's a solid, tense, tactical cooperative game where the flicking portion deftly marries all the other facets of play into a very cohesive, intense tactical experience. It solves some of the problems I have with flickers in the past, being a admitted mediocre flicker myself, and as well as a barrier to employing others to enjoy and take in the fun. I think it gives you enough control to feel accomplished when your plan works, and it also gives you enough control to feel a sense of culpability when things don't go your way. It's not simply because your flicker was off that day. I think it has some veins of inspiration from a variety of sources, and I can't help but going back to my computer game, Desire 2, and games of this Earth Reborn. Okay, that's a board game, but still, I mean, it's a game sadly underappreciated that really does a lot of what this does in an even larger degree, but with too much overhead to really get it to the table, whereas this, not so much. Invisible Ink, which is a game that is on the computer game where you have that sort of same tension of known antagonists around, but everyone has imperfect information but suspicions of where they are. There's that, at least in the initial game. This is not a sneaker game at all. This is you can only sneak so far, and then all heck breaks loose. Metal Gear Solid, think of that. Like, you're trying to sneak around, but imagine this, except you don't get the, you rarely will be able to get through without having alarms go off and things go on in, bringing in reinforcements from different vectors. Somebody reminds me of Far Cry, when you're going on an outpost, and as long as you can take people out silently, but once you can't, once somebody sees you and hits that alarm, everybody's coming in, and that's when you get into the major fight. And SEAL Team 6 is way more that than it is the initial prelude to it of the sneaking around. A little bit of both, but don't be fooled into thinking this is all Sneakerville. And Burgle Brothers, kind of, with the patrolling the predictive routes, as that's a fun little board game, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that too. And so ultimately, I think that it's incredibly well thought out. I think they really did put a lot of homework into it, and even though there's some rules that kind of I didn't quite get at first and whatever, and it took a while, I feel good when I go into it. I feel strong when I'm into it. I feel tense and vulnerable at times, and then I feel powerful. I love it when a plan comes together. It's a reimagining and a reinvigorating of flicking games that for me just levels up the whole playing field and says, why can't it, let's get some more of these out here and going on. It adds skill-based challenges where I want them. In some ways, I wish that I could take my XCOM high-level strategy game, the timed one, and add this as an XCOM tactical level squad game. This really fits the bill. I could totally see this being doing it. Also, I really want to see more like historical missions played out with this. Even though there's no curveball innovations with the campaign system, it does the job. It's tight, it's sensible, it's compelling, and it's rife for expansions. I really hope that what I'm talking about years from now is not just a one-shot work, but the beginning of a great line of games in this series. It is fantastic. I highly recommend it. It took me by surprise. I came in with modest expectations and left with just absolute, almost adoration for how well this game has advanced the bar. And I want to see more. Give me more, guys. So anyway, thanks for your time, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.